The vacation was meant to be perfect, the family's first real break in years. Emily was excited to create happy memories, away from the daily grind and stress. Everything seemed normal until her mother grabbed her purse with an overly casual gesture. "We're going to use this for something important," she said, her forced smile betraying an anxiety Emily didn't immediately understand. The shock came swiftly and cruelly when she saw her credit card swiped through the machine. The amount on the screen was exorbitant. It didn't make sense. Nothing on the trip cost that much. Emily's heart pounded. "Mom, what are you doing?" Her mother tried to appear calm, but her eyes betrayed her guilt. "It's just an expense I needed to take care of. We'll sort it out later." But there was nothing normal about the transaction. Emily knew her spending habits well and knew that this amount was beyond anything reasonable. Her stomach churned. She tried to convince herself it was a misunderstanding, a travel emergency perhaps. But the way her mother stuffed the receipt into her purse, like she was hiding evidence of a crime, suggested otherwise. Back at the hotel, Emily pretended to need a moment alone. As soon as the bathroom door closed, her heart raced. She rummaged through her mother's purse, her hands trembling with anger and fear of what she might find. The receipt was there, crumpled at the bottom. When she opened it, the creditor's name jumped out at her, a collection agency. The floor seemed to collapse beneath her. It wasn't a travel purchase. It wasn't anything she could have imagined. It was a debt payment. And not just any debt, but something old, accumulated. Something her mother had been hiding for a long time. Emily tried to process the betrayal. Her credit card was used to pay debts she didn't even know existed. The trust she had in her mother shattered in an instant. She needed answers, needed to understand what was happening. But when she left the bathroom, she found her mother smiling as if nothing had happened. "Are you okay, dear?" The sweet tone made her feel a lump in her throat. How could she pretend so well? How could she have the nerve to use her daughter to cover up such a dirty secret? Emily forced a smile, struggling to hold back tears. This trip was just beginning, and so was the nightmare. In the days that followed, Emily watched her mother's every move with critical eyes. The laughter seemed forced, the gestures rehearsed. Every attempt to get closer sounded fake. Emily wanted to confront her, demand explanations, but fear paralyzed her. What if there were more lies? What if this was just the tip of the iceberg? She needed proof, needed the whole truth before confronting her. At every moment her mother was distracted, Emily rummaged through her purse for more clues. What she found left her breathless. Hidden collection letters, some so old the paper was yellowed. Each letter was a blow. Threats of foreclosure, notices of service termination, unaffordable charges. Emily felt the world spin as she realized this wasn't a simple debt. It was a financial black hole, a snowball that had grown for years while her mother pretended everything was fine. Memories began to flood back. Excuses for late bills, mysterious phone calls, sleepless nights. How didn't she notice before? How could she have been so blind? Emily clutched the letters to her chest, trying to understand. Her mother lied. And it wasn't just about money. It was about everything. The confrontation was inevitable. Emily entered her mother's room, the letters trembling in her hands. "What is this?" Her voice came out choked, her eyes burning with anger and disappointment. Her mother froze, her face losing color. "Emily, I can explain." But there was no explanation that could erase those threatening words in the letters. Emily felt her blood boil. "You lied to me. You used my card to hide all of this. How could you do this?" Her mother tried to approach, but Emily recoiled. She didn't want that touch. She didn't want to be comforted by the woman who betrayed her so deeply. Her mother broke down, tears streaming down her face as she confessed the extent of the disaster. The debt started small, but grew quickly when Emily's father lost his job. She tried to keep up appearances to protect the family, to give Emily a life without worries. But pride prevented her from asking for help, and the bills piled up. When everything seemed hopeless, she used her daughter's card as a last desperate attempt to avoid collapse. "I just wanted to keep the family together," she sobbed, her voice broken by shame. Emily wanted to feel compassion, but could only feel anger. Each of her mother's words was a blow. "You used my trust to sustain a lie. You manipulated me." Emily was shaking, her heart racing. She wanted to scream, she wanted to cry, she wanted to run away. "You destroyed everything, and you still have the nerve to say you did it for me?" Her mother had no answer, just tears. Emily saw there not only a liar, but a broken woman, suffocated by a secret that corroded every piece of her life. But that didn't justify the betrayal. It didn't justify using her daughter's credit card to cover up debts. Emily didn't know how to forgive that. The days that followed were a nightmare. Their relationship was in ruins. Every conversation was a fight. Every attempt at reconciliation ended in screams and accusations. Emily couldn't look at her mother without remembering the letters, the hidden receipt, the way she was used. She felt betrayed, manipulated, deceived. But she also felt sorry. She saw the deep circles under her mother's eyes, her face marked by stress. The debts weren't just financial. The price was her health, her dignity, her peace of mind. Emily realized how much her mother suffered in silence, but didn't know how to erase the pain of the lie. At the end of the trip, Emily packed her bags in silence, trying to hold back tears. She wanted to go home, but knew that nothing would be the same. Her mother stood in the doorway, her face marked by guilt. "I just wanted to protect you," she murmured. Emily shook her head, holding back tears. "You destroyed my trust. I don't know when, or if, I'll be able to forgive you." She passed by her mother without looking back. There was nothing more to say. What was broken there could not be fixed with words. And as the plane took off, Emily realized that the journey back would be much longer than she imagined. Back in her routine, Emily tried to move on with her life, but nothing seemed the same. The house that was once a refuge now seemed full of shadows. Each room carried echoes of the lies her mother hid for so long. Emily spent hours staring at the ceiling, reliving every moment of that trip. The way her mother hid the receipt, the tears when confronted. But what haunted her most was the feeling of being used. It wasn't just about money, it was about trust. And Emily didn't know how to deal with the pain of being betrayed by the person she loved most. Conversations at home were cold and short. Her mother tried to act normally, smiling as if nothing had happened, but Emily saw the cracks in the facade. Eyes swollen from crying, hands trembling when spreading butter on bread. Emily wondered if her mother was always this broken woman and she just didn't notice. But resentment spoke louder. Every morning, her mother's face reminded her of the lie. Emily couldn't forgive, but she didn't know how to move on. She was trapped in a cycle of anger and sadness. Determined to understand the full extent of the problem, Emily began to investigate the family's finances. She spent nights rummaging through bank statements, old bills, and stored receipts. With each paper found, the hole seemed deeper. Loans taken out to cover other debts, maxed out credit cards, interest accumulated over the years. It was a labyrinth of debts and broken promises. Emily wondered how her mother kept it hidden for so long. But what hurt the most was realizing that everything was done to maintain appearances. She was used as a facade, a pawn in a cruel game of pretense. The revelations didn't stop. Emily discovered that the debt wasn't just the result of mismanagement, but of manipulation. A family friend, Richard Coleman, convinced her mother to invest in a business that promised high and quick profits. He manipulated her, exploiting her fear of appearing unsuccessful and her desire to maintain social status. But the business was a fraudulent scheme. When everything collapsed, the debts exploded. Emily felt her blood boil. It wasn't just about money. It was about betrayal, not only from her mother, but from someone who pretended to be a friend. The hatred for Richard burned like fire in her chest. Emily remembered him dining at her house, laughing with the family, offering financial advice while manipulating her mother behind her back. She saw the game clearly now. Richard convinced her to keep everything a secret, claiming that it was just a phase and that everything would be resolved soon. But it was a calculated lie. He knew that, as long as her mother hid the truth, he would remain in control. Emily clenched her fists, determined to expose that liar. She wouldn't let Richard escape unpunished, not after destroying her family. Her mother tried to justify her choices. "I just wanted to protect you." "Protect the family." Emily laughed, but it was a bitter laugh. "Protect the family? You destroyed my trust. You used me to hide your lies." Her mother burst into tears, but Emily was beyond compassion. Everything seemed like a sham. "You trusted a stranger, but lied to me. You chose him instead of me." The words came out sharp, cutting like blades. Emily saw the pain on her mother's face, but couldn't bring herself to care. She was tired of the excuses. All she wanted was the truth and justice. Determined to expose Richard, Emily began to investigate on her own. She rummaged through financial records, talked to people who were also scammed. Each conversation revealed new layers of manipulation. Richard didn't just convince her mother to invest. He manipulated her emotions, exploiting her vulnerability. He promised financial stability, security for the family. He used her worry as a weapon. The more Emily discovered, the more her anger grew. Richard destroyed her family with empty promises and cold-blooded lies. And worst of all, he was still unpunished. Emily sought help from a lawyer, Michael Thompson, specializing in financial crimes. Seeing the evidence gathered, Michael was impressed with Emily's courage. "You're facing a powerful enemy," he warned. Richard had influence and money, an empire built on the debts of his victims. But Emily didn't back down. It wasn't just about financial justice. It was personal. Richard used her mother. He manipulated her fears to exploit her financially. And he used Emily's card as part of the plan. Emily wouldn't let him destroy her family with impunity. As the case developed, Emily faced new emotional challenges. Revealing the truth meant exposing her mother's lies publicly. She knew the shame would be devastating, but she also knew that justice couldn't wait. "Are you sure you want to go through with this?" Michael asked. Emily hesitated, her heart heavy. She thought of her mother, the sacrifices made to protect the family, however distorted they were. But then she remembered the collection letters, the sleepless nights, the pain of being used. "I need to do this. Not just for me, but for her too." The trial was a spectacle of tension and raw emotions. Richard tried to manipulate the court as he manipulated her mother, with charm and lies. He claimed it was a financial misunderstanding and that he never intended to deceive anyone. Emily had to listen to those lies without exploding. But Michael was prepared. He presented irrefutable evidence, including messages in which Richard deliberately encouraged Emily's mother to keep the debts a secret. Each revelation shattered the mask of respect and success that Richard had built. For the first time, he seemed nervous, and Emily savored that moment of justice. When Emily took the stand, her voice trembled, but not from fear, from contained anger. She told how she discovered the secret, how she was manipulated, how her credit card was used to cover up dirty debts. "I trusted my mother, and he used that trust against me." Emily looked directly at Richard, her eyes burning with fierce determination. "He destroyed my family, and he still tries to pretend he's the victim." The courtroom was in absolute silence. No one dared breathe. Even Richard looked away, knowing his facade was exposed. The verdict was unanimous: guilty. Richard was convicted of fraud and financial manipulation, with a prison sentence long enough to destroy his reputation. Emily watched as he was handcuffed, his arrogance finally broken. It wasn't just a legal victory. It was an emotional liberation. Emily knew that the past would still haunt her for a while, but now there was room for healing. Leaving the courtroom, she looked at her mother. They were broken, yes, but they were also free. For the first time, there were no more secrets between them. Even with Richard behind bars, the emotional scars remained. Emily tried to resume her routine, but nothing seemed normal. Returning home meant facing her mother every day, remembering the lies, the manipulations, the debts that almost destroyed the family. No matter how many times she told herself that justice was done, the emptiness was still there. The betrayal was ingrained in the walls of that house. Emily felt that the trial did not end the story. It was just the beginning of a new pain, the pain of learning to trust again. Emily's mother was unrecognizable. The weight of shame and guilt consumed her. She isolated herself, barely leaving her room. At every attempt to talk, crying came before words. Emily wanted to feel anger, wanted to confront her once again. But all she felt was pity. For the first time, she saw her mother as a fragile human being, someone who made mistakes out of fear and desperation. Emily realized that the burden of debt was nothing compared to the weight of shame that her mother carried. But how to forgive when the pain was still so deep? Determined to understand what led her mother to hide the debts, Emily suggested they do family therapy. There was resistance at first, but her mother agreed, knowing she needed to face her own demons. In the first session, the tension was palpable. Words came out broken by tears and shame. The mother confessed that the fear of social judgment paralyzed her. "I was so afraid of disappointing you, of being seen as a failure." Emily listened in silence, feeling her heart tighten. For the first time, she saw how much her mother suffered in silence. The therapy sessions revealed painful secrets. The mother admitted that, deep down, she knew the debts were out of control, but pride prevented her from asking for help. I felt so alone. And lying seemed easier than admitting failure. Emily tried to imagine the weight of this loneliness, but could only remember the hidden receipt, the collection letters, the way she was used to cover up a lie. Still, seeing her mother's tears, she felt a glimmer of compassion. It wasn't an excuse, but it was an explanation, and perhaps a first step towards healing. While working in therapy, Emily confronted not only her mother's lies, but also her own feelings. She carried the pain of betrayal, but also the fear of never trusting again. She admitted that she felt guilty for not noticing anything. How didn't I see what was happening? How was I so blind? The therapist explained that love creates blind spots, that the desire to believe the best in people can prevent you from seeing the truth. Emily realized that she was not only the victim of a financial fraud, but of an illusion that she helped sustain. The relationship between mother and daughter was under reconstruction. There wasn't a day without tears, nor a conversation without pain. But little by little, they began to rediscover trust. Emily still felt betrayed, but now saw her mother as a woman who erred trying to protect the family, even if in the worst possible way. They established clear boundaries, including complete financial transparency. Each invoice was discussed, each financial decision was made together. Trust was being rebuilt, one step at a time. But Emily knew that healing would be a long process. The impact of the scandal went beyond the walls of the house. The news about Richard Coleman's scheme spread throughout the city, and the family was judged publicly. Cruel comments appeared on social media, accusing Emily's mother of greed and irresponsibility. Longtime friends distanced themselves. Emily realized the weight of the appearances her mother tried to maintain. And ironically, now they were exposed and vulnerable like never before. But this time, Emily refused to run. Shame would not destroy her family again. They would face public judgment together. To deal with the exposure, Emily decided to turn pain into purpose. Inspired by her journey, she launched a blog called Truth and Debts, where she shared her story and offered advice on financial transparency. It wasn't just a vent, it was a form of empowerment. The blog quickly gained attention, with people from all over the country sharing their own experiences with debts and family secrets. Emily realized that her pain was not unique, that other families were also suffocated by appearances and secrets. She found purpose in vulnerability. The blog brought unexpected challenges. The exposure attracted criticism, including accusations that she was exploiting her family's pain for attention. Emily was shaken, but remained firm. She knew the truth needed to be told, even if it hurt. Each message of hate was offset by dozens of messages of gratitude from people who found courage to confront their own financial secrets. Emily realized she was making a difference. She was helping other people break the cycle of shame and lies. It was the beginning of a new legacy. During this journey, Emily discovered that Richard's impact went beyond her own family. Other victims began to appear, revealing similar stories of manipulation and fraud. Richard not only destroyed her life, but the lives of countless families. Emily saw an opportunity for greater justice. She gathered the victims, organized support meetings, and helped build a collective case against Richard. It wasn't just about revenge, it was about preventing him from destroying more lives. Emily turned her pain into power. And this time, she wasn't fighting alone. With the movement growing, Emily received invitations to speak at events about financial education and personal overcoming. Each story shared was an act of courage and healing. By talking about her betrayal, about the hidden collection letters, about shame and anger, Emily found a way to break free. She was no longer trapped in pain. She was no longer imprisoned by the credit card secret. She was using the truth to heal not only her family, but countless others. By embracing her vulnerability, Emily finally found freedom. Years later, seeing her mother smiling again, Emily realized how much they had grown. The scars were there, but now they were marks of overcoming. What began as a devastating secret turned into a legacy of truth and love. Emily proved that pain can be transformed into purpose, that forgiveness can heal the deepest wounds, and that the truth, however painful, is always the path to freedom. The cycle of lies was broken. And finally, Emily and her mother were free to start over, together without secrets, just love. With the blog growing and her voice echoing as a beacon of truth and redemption, Emily was invited to give a lecture on overcoming financial trauma. The auditorium was packed. People of all ages waited anxiously to hear her story. Emily prepared to go on stage, her hands trembling not with fear but with emotion. She looked at the audience and recognized in their eyes the same pain she carried for so long, The weight of shame, betrayal, guilt. She took a deep breath and began to speak. It all started with a credit card and a secret that almost destroyed my family. The words came out loaded with emotion, each syllable reverberating in the silent room. Emily spared no details. She talked about the hidden receipt, the collection letters, the suffocating anger upon discovering that she was used to cover up debts. But she also talked about her mother's sacrifice, about the fear of judgment that led her to lie. I saw the woman I loved most turn into a stranger, and I didn't know how to forgive her. Her voice trembled, but Emily continued. It wasn't just about telling her story. It was about giving others permission to tell theirs. The silence in the room was absolute. Some eyes shone with uncontained tears. Emily paused, letting the words settle. Then, with a sad smile, she continued. I thought the betrayal had destroyed me, but I realized that what held me back was not what my mother did, but the weight of the secret. When I decided to face the truth, I finally freed myself. The emotion in her voice made the audience hold their breath. Emily was there, vulnerable, stripped of pride, showing her scars without shame. And by doing so, she was helping others find the courage to break free as well. When the lecture ended, the auditorium exploded with applause. Emily looked at the crowd and felt a wave of gratitude. She did it. She transformed pain into purpose, betrayal into power. Getting off the stage, she was surrounded by emotional people, sharing stories of financial secrets, hidden debts, family betrayals. Each confession was a piece of the emotional burden being released. Emily listened to each story with empathy, knowing how difficult it is to admit the truth. She wasn't just inspiring people. She was creating a movement of healing and truth, a cycle of redemption. But not everyone was ready to embrace the truth. The criticism came with force. People accused her of exposing her own mother too much, of using family pain to gain fame. Emily read each cruel comment, feeling her stomach churn. There were judgments from all sides, from relatives, from acquaintances, and from complete strangers on the internet. The price of truth was high, but Emily was prepared. She didn't allow hate to silence her. She knew that her story wasn't just about pain, but about overcoming. And that by telling her truth, she was giving voice to those who still suffered in silence. Emily's mother watched the lecture online. She saw her daughter reliving the pain, exposing the lies, the debts, the sacrifice. She cried listening to Emily talk about broken trust and about the fear of never forgiving her. But for the first time, she saw her daughter not only as a victim, but as a survivor, someone who turned scars into strength. The shame was still there, but now mixed with pride. Emily's mother realized that the journey of forgiveness wasn't just hers, but theirs. It was time to face the past and rebuild what was broken. Determined to redeem herself, the mother sought professional help. She joined support groups for debtors, sharing her story with painful sincerity. By exposing her flaws, she began to free herself from the shame that kept her prisoner for years. She also began to work in Emily's foundation, helping other mothers avoid the same mistakes. Each lecture was a public confession, a silent plea for forgiveness to her daughter. She was determined to rebuild trust, not with empty promises, but with sincere actions. It was a long road, but she was ready to walk alongside Emily. The two began to get closer again. There were no more secrets, just sincere conversations. Emily discovered things she never knew. How her mother spent sleepless nights trying to find a way out. How shame paralyzed her every time she saw the creditor's name. For the first time, Emily felt the weight of her mother's sacrifice, the emotional burden she carried in silence to protect the family. It still hurt, there was still pain, but now there was also empathy. They were rebuilding trust, not in a hurry, but with patience and truth. During a fundraising event for the foundation, Emily went on stage alongside her mother. The audience held their breath as the two shared their story, recounting each pain, each lie, each confrontation. But the most powerful moment came when Emily's mother held her hand and looked into her daughter's eyes. I broke your trust. I lied because I was afraid. But by doing that, I lost you. Her voice broke, tears streaming down. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I want to deserve it. I want to regain your trust, one day at a time. Emily couldn't hold back tears. There, in front of everyone, she hugged her mother, whispering, I forgive you, not because you made mistakes, but because I also want to be free. The room exploded in emotional applause. There were no more secrets. There was no more shame. just a love rebuilt on top of painful truths. Leaving the stage, Emily realized that she was finally at peace. The cycle of pain and betrayal was transformed into a legacy of truth and love. Alongside her mother, Emily found redemption and the courage to continue telling her story to help other families break free. Years later, Emily wrote her third book, entitled The Price of Truth, where she not only told her journey, but taught about forgiveness, resilience, and financial transparency. The launch was an emotional event, surrounded by friends, family, and strangers who felt touched by her story. Holding the book in her hands, Emily saw not only words, but scars transformed into power. She knew that her story would continue to inspire generations, helping other families break the cycle of secrets. For the first time, she felt truly free. The credit card secret could have destroyed her family. But by facing the truth, Emily transformed pain into a legacy of love, truth, and courage. And alongside her mother, she proved that forgiveness does not erase scars, but transforms them into strength. Finally, they were free, together, and without more secrets.
Hi, you are on the Moving Narratives channel. Subscribe and follow our stories.
His tired eyes focused on his son, and his voice was weak but clear. "You did the right thing." Ethan held his hand, feeling the weight of all that had transpired. The Carter Empire had survived, now belonging to someone who deserved to carry it. And for the first time in a long time, Ethan knew his mother would have been proud.
Why'd you have to taunt me with one little word? No, no, no. Why'd you have to haunt me with one little word? No, no, no. You gave me